right, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time because I know these evening hours are precious, but I just want to introduce myself first. My name's Teresa Marsden. I'm the Director of Communications at Great Valley School District, and we partner with Be a Part of the Conversation, which is a local organization that provides services to communities and school districts as far as programming around a variety of topics that impact our students. So we're really proud of this partnership. And it's something Great Valley's been involved with for many years. We do this speaker series usually around 3 times a year. We'll have topics that our parents are interested in that you bring to us, and we kind of give back by having our partners present to you these topics that you're interested in. So I will introduce Kim Porter. She's the co-founder and executive director of Be a Part of the Conversation, and she really leads the programming behind their work, and she'll kind of facilitate tonight's program, and along with Mike Blanche, who I'll let her introduce as well.
Okay, so glad that you're all with us. Thank you very much, Teresa, for the introduction. I am the executive director of Be a Part of the Conversation. My name is Kim Porter, as Teresa said. Thank you so much for this partnership. It's been a lot of years, and I love the partnership. We talked earlier with Mike about this, how this is a really great school district. You parents show up. We always have good numbers, and once again, that's coming true tonight. So good for you, really and truly impressive. We have a very robust website with a lot of information on it, so I invite you to check that out. I'm going to put links to all the things I'm about to mention to you in the chat when I finish talking. So just want to let you know to visit our website for supportive information. We have a YouTube channel, which is where this program, once it's recorded, will be, you'll be able to find it probably in a day or two once we process the video. That'll be showing up on our YouTube channel. I'll give you that link as well, but we have lots and lots of topics on that page. We have weekly parent partnership meetings. These are for parents like myself who have a son or daughter of any age who struggles with substance use. I have a son who's been in recovery for a lot of years, thank goodness, but I've been through it, and I don't know what I would do without my peers who have been through it as well. So these are 19 meetings that take place, some online, some in person. There's a calendar on this page that, again, I'll share with you that has details about all of the meetings, links to the Zoom meetings, addresses for the in-person meetings. Everything is free. You just show up. You don't have to register. We are really happy to tell you that we now have a sibling partnership meeting. This is for anyone 18 and over who has a brother or sister who struggles with substance use, has struggled or currently struggles, or even has lost their life because of a substance use disorder. And these folks meet weekly on Zoom, and it's been really tremendous, and they're very grateful for that support. And finally, I want to tell you about our family recovery course. This is once again, totally free to attend, a 3-part course for parents, caregivers, guardians whose son or daughter, grandson, granddaughter has struggled with a substance use disorder at any point in their lives. Currently, previously, you're concerned. They could be a teenager, or they could be in their 30s or 40s. It doesn't matter. We hope you'll join us for this because it's been really tremendous. It's led by 2 peers. I'm one of 18 instructors for this course. We cap it at 12 individuals, so it's nice and intimate. There's an awful lot of opportunity to connect with each other. And then I will make a shameless plug for our membership because all of this is available to you at no cost to you. We're really grateful for partnerships like we have with Great Valley School District, but we do rely a lot on private donations as well. So there's an opportunity to pay as little as $10 a month to be a member of our conversation circle. And we'll be really, really grateful for that support so that we can keep doing this forever and ever. So I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend, Michael Blanche. Mike, by the way, full disclosure, he is our clinical advisor and has been supporting our organization for all of our almost 15 years, which is crazy. Hard to believe. Michael is the co-founder and chief clinical officer of Ethos Treatment. He is a licensed clinical social worker that has more than 20 years of experience providing direct clinical treatment for those who are dually diagnosed with addiction and other psychological challenges. Michael has worked in all levels of care in the treatment of addiction and mental health. He has extensive expertise in establishing and supervising residential and outpatient programs throughout the Philadelphia metropolitan area. Michael's a leading expert in the field of prevention, specializing in middle school and high school prevention talks and staff development, which he has done at Great Valley, providing continuing education on the impact of technology, which you're going to hear about tonight, Process addictions, complex trauma, young adult substance use with dual diagnosis are just a few workshops that he has facilitated. Michael is known for working with complex individuals and their families, assisting in difficult times of discerning the appropriate level of care or proper placement. So without further ado, Michael Blanche.
Thank you, Kim. But thank you, Teresa. Thank you to Great Valley School District at first. You're in the school district. I don't need to sell you on the school district. I love your school district. I've been out in Chester County since 2003, personally and professionally, and have had the opportunity to work with the school district on many levels and different opportunities. So first and foremost, I'm a big fan of your school. Two is I'm a big fan of this topic, and I'll get into that topic very briefly. But third is I'm a big fan of Be a Part of the Conversation. As Kim said, I was one of the first presenters, and it was one of the first topics I did was this topic, and this topic has evolved, has changed, and every slide deck, every time I do it, it always changes and always evolves because technology is ever changing. And so as I get into tonight and as I get into a slide presentation, a couple key things to know is first is you can screen grab. None of my information is like copyrighted information. You can get it anywhere. Kim's website, by the way, I refer a lot to Be a Part of the Conversation's website. If you haven't checked it out, take 5 minutes. It's free, accessible links to so many, and she just put it in the chat, so many pieces of information, including even just the YouTube channel itself. At the beginning of COVID, we had this interesting conversation. How are we going to continue these talks? And we pivoted to being from in-person, all of our talks, to this telehealth. And we're still doing telehealth, clearly. And so recording these and having these as a backlog, I still send people to multiple different talks that we've done over the time, and they're free, accessible information. So at the end of tonight, I'm going to be talking about how great technology is, and her website is my keynote part because of Be a Part of the Conversation and all of their work that we need to continue to grow in. It's accessible. It's free. When I first started working with clients that suffered with substance abuse and drug and alcohol and mental health treatment, I would say to a client, hey, can you go to Barnes & Noble and buy this book and hope that you don't run into a neighbor, a friend, and when you're buying a book under the influence or coming out of the shadows or something like that. But the point is that now, before a client leaves, I can text them links to amazing websites, and I could text podcasts, and there's so much accessible truth to technology. So before I get too far, I'm going to start tonight by saying it's not all that bad. It is, there are elements that we need to inform ourselves. So if I was to frame tonight, half of the conversation will be about the language and why is it a challenge, and give you language to how to communicate with your children and your families about why it's an issue. And then lastly is interventions on what is, how to reframe and how to work with technology, because it's here. The train has left the station. Technologies are already in our back pocket. Your kids are, I used to say digital natives, and then I updated in saying they're social media natives. And now I'm saying your kids are AI natives, where we are digital immigrants, social media immigrants, and absolutely AI immigrants, meaning this is the first class. This is the first year. I'm sorry, the last 2 years when it comes to AI, for instance, that these years are the first years that we're really seeing the impact of AI. And I apologize to kids every day. Kim and I presented to a local school in Delaware County where I had the opportunity to sit across from freshmen, and they gave me feedback, and we had interactive feedback. So tonight, I'll be presenting researched information, but also input that I get from students locally, and direct information from clients that I've worked with, and then also families that I've worked with as well. So that's where I come from. And lastly, as an adolescent therapist and somebody that's worked with adolescents most of my career, I'm used to getting interrupted. So if at any time you have something that you feel like pressing, or you just want to ask, or you just want to put out there, don't hesitate to put it in the chat. Know that I'm not going to say, Sally said this. So if you want to be confidential, we're not going to name your name. So if you had a question that you want to pose to me, please don't hesitate to put it out there in the chat. And Kim knows me well enough to know she can interrupt me at any time. But if not, you can by putting it in the chat. So don't hesitate there. So when it came to this topic, I want to make sure, first off, can everybody see the PowerPoint as we get going? Thank you. I just want to make sure my technology is working when I'm starting a technology talk. I just want to make sure everybody sees that. It can be overwhelming. It can be challenging. And this world of technology is ever moving and ever changing. But a lot of what I'm going to present tonight is classic parenting pieces, and to not forget that you as a parent have a lot of say in this process. And if there's one thing you get out of tonight, is you're still parents, and you still have the right to parent as you see fit in your own home. Just because our landscape and their backyard got a lot bigger doesn't mean that you're more important today as a parent than we ever were. So, however, I do want to make sure we're all in agreement of a term to make sure as we get going, when we're talking about this topic, please know, I want to avoid fuddy-duddyism at optimum speed. I want to avoid being resistance to change. I want to avoid the generational gap. It is the biggest generational gap. I just want to acknowledge it, but I also don't want it to define us, because I don't know how many people on this call were, back in the day, that rock and roll music is going to make you do drugs, or the boob tube of technology of the TV is going to slow you down. Yes, but it's still there. You know what I mean? Rock and roll music and the television and technology, and it's in our kids' back pocket. And so we have to think about it in a different way, in a different light. So avoiding it, and avoiding being afraid to talk about it, and avoiding learning about it. And that's where I know I'm preaching the choir. If you showed up for this call, I just hope you remain open-minded as we get going in the discussion. There was a great book that came out a couple springs ago, and it was mentioned, actually, by the way, before tonight's talk, I got, 11, 12 amazing, great questions from you that you really gave it a lot of thought. And one of the questions framed out a book by this guy, Jonathan Haidt, called The Anxious Generation. I really liked it. If you haven't gotten a chance to read it, I highly recommend it. And supposedly he just came out with a follow-up called The Amazing Generation, which I haven't had the chance to check out yet. But this book in particular, I loved how he framed the 4 factors in contributing why it's an issue. Because again, it dovetails into a couple of your main questions of where it is and why it's a problem. So the main big issue when it comes to technology in his work, in his research, is the idea of social deprivation. Well, what does that mean? Like, aren't we more connected? Aren't we more available? Aren't we just as available? No, it's digital communication and over-dependence and over-reliance on texting and social media for interaction lessens that ability to really see each other. So when I look at you, when I'm staring at a screen, it's one thing. But when I see people's interactions and I see people's faces and I see somebody's eyes, there's this thing called oxytocin that gets released. And that feeling of being able to look at somebody's eyes and see somebody's response when I'm looking at somebody and I feel that connection, I don't get tonight in full transparency. I'm just staring at my screen. I don't see, a couple people were logged on, were showing your screen at first. That's fine. But in a Zoom presentation, I know what I was signing up for tonight. And I know I'm not getting that feeling, even though I see some of your screens and some of your faces. But it's so much different. It's so much more in depth when we see it. 87% of communication is nonverbal. What does that mean? Like tonality, body posturing, openness. And so it's all in how I'm speaking and all of how I'm communicating. It gets lost in translation if it's just a flat word, a flat text, And how many times have you fought with your kids? How many times have you fought with your partner when you may say something that gets misread or misinterpreted? Half of my couples work is reinterpreting text messages and get misread and blown out of proportion, and people reading into a comment or a sentence or why didn't you text me back? And so when it comes to digital communication, it reduces that face-to-face, social gathering, social initiatives, and post-pandemic, I think we're still really getting out of that isolation. Isolation is at the core of mental health issues. Isolation is at the core of substance use. And isolation affects people's ability to think through and feel connected and feel a part of. And people feel more alone to make unhealthy decisions. Also, underdeveloped skills of lack of participation, reading social body language and social development, and weakening support groups of real world groups as well. So people feel less a part of, less connected. Sleep deprivation. A lot of people asked around sleep. And again, if you're staring at your screen, and the thing that I talk about all the time, if this is the last thing you put down before you go to bed, and this is the first thing you pick up, that's my issue. And I'm going to talk about that multiple times. But Mike, it's my alarm clock. Well, Mike, it's the last thing I want to check before I go to sleep. Well, it's the first thing you pick up. And before you get out of bed, are you inviting thousands of input, unfiltered, into your world before you're cognitively awake? What are we going to sleep with and what are we waking up with? And that's my biggest issue, is this device in the bedroom, this device in the screen time, and how we spend our time is so critical. And so when it comes to this notion of evening screen time and how late and how long they're on their phones for, how late they're on their device for, that really interrupts sleep and sleep cycles. Interrupted sleep, when they get notifications during the night, and you've all heard the old adage of what happens on the streets after 11 o'clock. Well, this is their backyard, this is their street, meaning, what do you really need your device for at 11 o'clock at night? What do you really need to be connected to at 2 a.m.? And so it interrupts sleep all the time. They're getting, notifications all the time. Delayed onset of sleep, blue light exposure. So they're not really getting that fullness, and it's harder to fall asleep, stay asleep. And you talk to anybody related to school, they're going to tell you how they are sleeping affects concentration, how they affect their ability to work in school, anxiety, and ability to connect to others. And so sleep is a huge thing going on in the classroom. This next one is a huge one, is attention fragmentation. How many of your kids are at home, they're watching Netflix on the big screen, they have their laptop out doing schoolwork, and they're texting their friends on their phone? And how many times they're trying to have a conversation with you and they're like, yep. And are they really connected? Or are they really just having constant interruptions, constant multitasking? Because I don't know about you, if you figured this out yet, but multitasking is a myth. It's not really being able to really fully engage and fully stay connected if we have these things going on. And when it comes to, Kim said it earlier, when it comes to this technology piece, it is not just the kids. I tell the story, and I'm going to stop sharing now for a second. I tell the story many times. My hardest part of my job, my hardest family session happened years ago, was when I was doing a family session. I was working with a kid, and the kid wanted to bring his parents in to open up about his trauma, what he was going through, and he wanted to open up to his parents. And the dad walked in, and I just met the parents. I had no idea what the parents did. And dad sat down, and dad said, "Oh, I gotta keep this out. I got a potential issue I got to look at." I'm like, "Sir, I just have you for 50 minutes, and it's really important for your son to talk." He said, yeah, I'll put it down. And he kept on leaning towards, and he kept on checking his phone, and he kept on interrupting literally the therapy session because this thing was going off. Now, I don't know if he was an emergency response person. I don't know what he really did, But all that kid saw was whatever's going on this screen is more important than what he's sharing. And how do you think that kid felt? And how do you think I felt as a therapist when I knew how important it was for this kid to connect and how disconnected he felt from the parent? And no shame, no blame to the parent, because we all of a sudden were given these devices and said self-regulate. We were given these devices without any discussion. We were given this addictive, mind-altering, algorithm thrown at us without any discussion. And so I don't blame the parent. I really don't. I blame us as a society without having these accurate conversations to really critically think about what we're ingesting, how we're ingesting this. So when I tell you that story, I want to make sure I get across to you, it's no blame. I just want everybody to reframe our relationship with technology, because how important it is that we're getting lost in connection and getting caught on this. Now, my next question is, how many times have you really tried having a conversation with your kids and you are like, they're not even listening to me, they're on their devices, they're not even looking up. And you could see, you could see the screen on their eyes. And that's what I know. I lost the kid. I'm not even going to even try to have a conversation if that kid's eyes is more focused on their device. So without judgment, I say to the kid, listen, I only get you for 55 minutes. I need all of our therapeutic settings don't allow technology in them, so they could be really present for other things called emotions or other things called their experience of identity and being able to learn about themselves. Because again, these distractory events, this myth of, are they able to really multitask is lost. So their attention spans are shortened. They're not able to really kind of stay fully present, and they're always looking for the immediate next, the immediate next, the immediate next. And it leads to cognitive overload, where there's so much information to bombard it. They lead to mental fatigue and decision paralysis. And that's where we're seeing a lot of young adults that are unable to really launch in a healthy, productive way. So when he talks about this anxious generation, it's not just 13, 12, 14, these kids that get into these devices, before they're cognitively framed. It's also these young adults that have had these devices and social media since 2007, 2010, 2014. One of the questions, and I've worked with many 19, 20-year-olds that have had these devices since 5th grade, 4th grade, and had social media since those years too. And we can renegotiate our relationship with it. And I do want to get that across right away. So the last thing he talks about at length, and where I'll talk about a little bit more, is the addictive nature of the digital platforms. These devices, these social media centers are engineered for engagement. These apps are designed to exploit psychological vulnerabilities, so they increase your use. They're dopamine-driven feedback loops, and it's not just video games. It's not just social media. It's YouTube. Somebody had a question about YouTube. I'll talk about. It's these ideas that we want to have these devices. YouTube is an example I'll get into in a second, but any of these platforms want higher engagement, more retention, more customer base. So they've figured out ways to keep people engaged. So we're not just up against these flat screen TVs. We're not just up against this television set that had 4 stations or a radio station that had 10 or 15 stations. We're up against multiple avenues of feedback loops that kids can feel like they have a sense of control, an illusion of control, but then they keep getting pulled back in and pulled back in. Now, the other piece that addictive nature really drives home is this FOMO and social comparison, the constant feeling of feeling, not enough and feeling anxious about missing out on opportunities. This is peer pressure 2.0. The classic sense of peer pressure doesn't exist anymore, but where I see it is this FOMO and social comparison. Again, these kids are social media natives. We're social media immigrants. Kids are saturated and developed, and this is a part of their identity. Some kids with mental health issues, some kids that have addictive nature in them already or more susceptible to get caught up in FOMO, to get caught up in thinking that this is real. But some kids have an understanding that not all of this social media is a real thing. And more kids are pushing back and questioning it. That's my hope for this next generation, because they really see it as a reality. But how many kids, and I say this all the time, how many kids are posting, I stayed in on a Friday night and ate frozen yogurt? How many kids are texting, oh, I'm really grateful I didn't go to that party last night? No, they're posting the perfect image, and they're posting one image that they've oversaturated and resaturated to make sure it looks perfect. They're not posting how they really felt about themselves. They're not really posting pictures about real, true connection. They're posting the perfect image that you're supposed to live up to. And that's really hard. And then more and more of these addictive worlds, then people neglect real world activities and more screen time activities. And then people, again, I'm not opposed to video games. I'm not opposed to Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not opposed to some of these worlds. However, if this is their only form of connection, and that's where, again, their worlds and worlds get smaller, and that's what addiction sounds like. So when it came to Jonathan Haidt's book, he really was able to capture where these four fragments are, where these four aspects are. The first, again, being social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and the addiction nature I'm going to take off of in a second. But before I get too far, I do want to backtrack to this is our landscape. This is our backyard now. 72% of kids between 6 and 12 have their own access to a tablet, smartphone, or iPad. 53% of kids under the age of 11 start their immersion into this world. And the average average amount of daily consumption is about 5.5 hours. Now, I'm going to come back to that number later, but if you think about it, 8 hours a day should be at sleep. 8 hours a day should be at school. Let's just say school/activity. So that's 16 hours. That leaves what? 8 hours left. And if 5.5 of those hours, I think that's a lot of time. And 83% of parents report their children use technology every day. And I think that number is low. And I think kids are using technology every day, all the time, on a constant thread. It's ever changing and it's ever growing. But again, I don't want you to stop being parents. So real quick, going back to the technology-related addiction, I'm going to talk a little bit about gaming in a second. Social media, I'll get into a little bit more. But kids get addicted to just constant threads of texting and having multiple threads of communication going. And they have Snapchat dialogues, they have Signal dialogues, they have multiple threads of multiple different apps of communication all the time that have access points in iPads or laptops or cell phones. So it's a lot of parents go, I shut down the phone. Well, A, this is not a phone. This is a mini computer. B, this is one avenue. So they have their iPads. And so there's multiple ways of those addictive natures of those communications. And the internet and just excessive browsing or daily ingestion and not being able to self-regulate when it comes to streaming content. And this is where I'll pause again and tell you the story of YouTube. If you ever heard the story of YouTube, YouTube's been around for a while, right? You've all heard of it. And YouTube is a great thing and a lot of great access points to information. We send to it all the time. But this idea of YouTube it was flat when it first came out, 2007, 2009. Those years, if you look back in the history of it, when they purchased it, Google was like, what are we going to do with this thing? The New York Times did a 7-part series called I forget the name of it off the top of my head. I'll remember in a second. But The Rabbit Hole. I apologize. So the name of the podcast was called The Rabbit Hole. It was a 7-part series that did investigative work on the research of the origin of this very nice thing called the YouTube suggested pages. Wasn't that nice that they came out with a suggestion of if you like this video about cats, you might like this video. And if you like that video, then you might like that video. And the next thing you know, they saw retention numbers go up, and the next thing you know, they saw viewership go up, and people stayed on YouTube longer. Isn't that nice? But what they also found is ad space and ad time went up dramatically, and they were able to put a price tag on this and say to their customer, look, we have people staying online that we would have to interrupt their videos to show more ads because people are staying on longer and longer and longer. So their algorithm got so good that they started showing shorts. And isn't that nice? And if you ever seen, even in the kids section, which I am not a huge fan of at all, to be fully transparent, the kids short section, the reason why I have the hardest time of it is this ability. Kids can swipe like none other so quickly that they don't have to, and they identify how you swipe, how long you swipe for, and what you're like. So they're getting better and better every time. The content gets so specific that YouTube's algorithms were basically ripped off to bring you this other product called TikTok. I don't know if you ever heard of this thing, but TikTok took off because they had 10 years of data of understanding how YouTube was delivering that For You page. And that's what it's called on TikTok. So when it comes to TikTok, this product, if you've never seen your kids' For You page, if you want to understand their reels on Instagram, spend time with your kids to understand what their content and what they're seeing and how they're sharing, what they're getting exposed to, because it's a real great insight of what they're getting exposed to on a regular routine basis. Again, it's one thing if you're into cat videos and we can laugh about that, but what if you're a kid who's got anxiety or depression? Or what if you're a kid with body image issues? Or what if you're a kid that's trying to keep up with the latest trends in substance world? And what if their substance abuse world is very glorification and misinformation around cannabis, for instance? So when it comes to this world, what are they getting fed? How are they getting fed? Gets really complex really quick. So YouTube isn't the problem per se, but it's an area that we got to look about. It's addictive. The same thing with kids YouTube. They identify tracks of it as well. And the real big thing is the shorts. I'm not a huge fan of those for that addictive reason. The video game industry is an industry that's taken off, and it is in the $200 billion range, with in the US alone is $56 billion annual goal of this, and where it is versus, if you guys all remember, or ladies remember, Pac-Man in 1982 sold 7 million copies of that beautiful game. We all remember Pac-Man, right? But the fact of these games, like Call of Duty, sold 1 billion in its first 15 days. The free game. Does everybody remember the free game called Fortnite? It's still free, for instance. But the players, the people, the constituent company that brought you Fortnite had 10 years of identifiable gamification behavior in that game called Call of Duty. Call of Duty had multiple games, multiple iterations, multiple things that they took all of those 10 years of 10 versions of Call of Duty to bring you Fortnite. And Fortnite, in its first year, and its free year, that's still free today, it grossed, 1.8 B with $1 billion. That made 1.8 B with $1 billion, because you have to get to a level and then you have to pay to play, or you have to invest in, and the next thing you know, it is an industry that's like none other. And that was 6 years ago. And it is iteration after iteration when this thing called Fortnite. Fortnite was the first game that you're able to play at this speed, meaning on your digital platform on an iPhone, and keep up with somebody on a laptop or keep somebody on an iPad. So it is a very interactive, very addictive game that kids are getting looped into all the time. So when it comes to the last thing I'll say about the video game industry is, a lot of people are like, yes, it's here. Yes, it's like none other. But you may have read this, because I keep my PowerPoints up for your digestion while I'm talking, is the average age of a video gamer is, 31 years old. And so when it comes to the average age of a video gamer, what does that mean? So I've been lucky enough to give this talk at Penn State for all their SAP providers across the state of Pennsylvania. I've been able to give this talk at an EAP convention with hundreds of employee assistance program folks. And when I tell you, the adults that come up to me that play video games at those levels, at those functions, and the average age. And so, do I want an 11-year-old to be exposed to a 36-year-old? Do I want a 14-year-old to be exposed to a 42-year-old? And they're playing the same game. That's where I worry about what they're getting exposed to, and their backyards are getting bigger. So we have to understand, again, I'm not opposed to games, but where and what they're getting exposed to, and are you listening? Have you ever listened to a game? Have you ever sat with your kids when they're playing a video game? How interactive of it? Those are the questions that I want you to start thinking about. Which leads to the same neurological event that happens when you're playing video games is the same compulsive behavior that we see in gambling. Gambling has taken off, and PS gambling, the biggest format in the state of Pennsylvania, and the billions of dollars that have taken off is in your back pocket. You can't watch ESPN. You can't watch a game, and the biggest game's coming up in a couple of weeks is the Super Bowl. You can't not hear the news without hearing the spread of this Super Bowl. And when it comes to the money that's spent on gambling and how big it is and how pervasive it is, I'm lucky enough, and we've had Harry on. Harry Levant is a national speaker. He is going after gambling institutions like big tobacco, like the big opiate industry. He's literally gone after it with those level of professionals because it is lying to us and the industry. I went to pay my babysitter the other day on Venmo, and I got an ad: sign up today, get $200 to start betting today on. I want to call it Fanjoy, but it's not Fanjoy. It's called something else. The gambling website.
FanDuel.
Thank you, thank you, Kim. I always get it wrong, but FanDuel. There's an ad on my Venmo. I can't even not pay my babysitter without seeing an ad on Venmo. And what Harry's point is that if you see this ad, and I'm an adult that's like, no, this is BS. But say I'm a kid, say I'm an 18, say I'm a younger kid, $200, sign up today. I'm going to sign up today. But it's what it is false advertising. If you read the fine print, if you really understand, that $200 isn't free. It's credit that you have to win, or I'm sorry, you have to play for X amount of time. Some are 6 months, some are 3 months, some are 30 days. You have to be involved in active playing. You have to have over $500, $3,000 for some, $5,000 for another to get this $200 in credit to play. It's not even like free. So it's all in the wording that Harry's identified, how these gaming industries really get kids acquired and how they get them pulled into playing because they obsess around money and they think they're going to get the next big win. An average survey of 16 to 25-year-olds see about almost 70 saw at least 4 gambling ads on social media per week. They're at high risk. And when Harry first came to me years ago at Ethos Treatment, we have 7 brick and mortar programs in and around Philadelphia. And when he came to me, he said he wanted to help me set up a gambling program. I thought I was going to be talking to like older people in Atlantic City. I had their demographic wrong. It's college age kids that are exposed to free credit cards or exposed to access point that they can start gambling at 18. And so a lot of them have been playing video games throughout high school and then jump right into gambling right away. And they lose tens of thousands of dollars before they are graduating high school. Or I'm sorry, graduating college. So the average age is like 18 to 24%, with 19% of them being high risk for problematic gambling. What does problematic gambling mean? It means they're losing tens of thousands of dollars. And these kids have access to a credit card that they really shouldn't. So I appreciate Kim putting in the thread Harry Levant's advocacy link. So I appreciate that because, again, if you want more information on it, that's a great link, and others are out there. So here are some of the other basics around. I'm going to go back to some of the language around the problem, and then I want to get to the solution in a little bit. I do want to take a sip of water just for a second because I need to make sure you understand aspects of technology and the problems of it before I get to the solutions. And this is some of the biggest problems that I want to explain in a second. Thank you. So my hope is most of you haven't heard this, or I'm sorry, my hope is most of you've heard this before. My hope is that you understand what I'm about to say. You've heard this before, but I hope you haven't missed out. Kids, your kids may lie. And if you haven't heard that before, I'm really sorry. Your kids may exaggerate. Your kids may tell a tall story. And we've all heard the myth of that perfect party from last weekend. Did you ever hear that event that you missed last weekend? And when I used to work directly more with substance use disorder on a regular routine basis, I realized way early on in my career, Fridays were a trigger for some to get ready for the weekend. But Mondays after a weekend were as problematic because Mondays was the day that everybody would go back to school and, oh, did you hear about that party from last weekend? Oh, you missed out on that event. Oh, I felt a case of FOMO because I missed out last weekend. And what I realized is the myth of the party we were up against. But that was a long time ago. And then this thing in 2007, 2009 really took off, this thing called Facebook and then Instagram. And the word Insta, took off. And now Snapchat. And now it is instantly in people's faces and they are getting updates on a regular routine basis of what they're missing. And so the idea that kids on first hand exaggerate and on second hand are trying to live up to this myth, it's a setup and it's a constant thread and a constant setup. And when I gave this talk a number of years ago, I'll never forget these group of seniors. I was lucky enough I do these small group workshops in schools. And these group of seniors gave me this instant feedback when I got to this part that they were telling me they were all at this group of seniors were honest with me. And they were telling me they were at a high school party and they were at a boring high school party. And what do you think it looks like when they're at a boring high school party? They're a group of kids sitting on their phones, staring at their phone. That's what a boring high school party was. And what happened was this kid, Johnny, was sitting at the party and he looked down on his phone and he started having FOMO at a party he was at. Let me explain that again. He was scrolling down and he was looking at a scroll and all of a sudden was seeing pictures of a really cool party. And they would look like he was missing out. But then he realized, well, wait, there's Sally. Wait, there's Johnny. Wait, there's Susie. And what happened was he was at a party and at some point during the night, they all went in another room, took a bunch of photos of themselves, and then they came back and sat down. According to social media, he was at a huge party. And this was this Halloween party. But it turned out he was having FOMO for a party he was at. And again, like kids exaggerate, kids will put it out there. But the truth is sometimes they feel less than, but they'll still put it out as an image. And again, like that's the constant piece that kids are up against all the time. They lack that ability to have accurate conversations about what's really happening and lack developmental conversational pieces. And again, think that they're supposed to live up to this idea. That's the constant thread that we have to look out for. This is all based in attachment theory. And this is a psychological theory that's been around for a while, that kids are lost and they're chasing an external sense of validation to fill some hole in the soul. So that's where they're trying to fill some disconnect by looking at something else to feel good about themselves. Some kids come from broken families or being a product of chaos. They're more comfortable in chaos. And what do you think this product is? Very chaotic, very interruptive. And it's also a constant escape. I don't know if you know this, but like I used to say, like, if you want to learn how people escape, look at a line of people in Starbucks. Now there's no lines at Starbucks, but when there was, people would all be awkwardly on their phones. Or if you ever get to an event early and you see a room full of people, they'll pull out their phones, they'll start to look busy. And I'm the awkward guy that'll be like, hey, how are you doing? Let me introduce you to somebody. But what happens is people fall into this pattern of staring at the screen, but not being able to connect. And abandonment and emotional deprivation leads to looking for those externals in a more aggressive fashion. And that's where we get into body image issues, and that's where we get into other aspects there. Substance use disorder. 90% of teens report seeing initial substance use disorder peers and older siblings on social media, before they see it in real life, IRL. And so what does that mean? They're going to normalize to it. They're getting exposed to substance use disorder and seeing that it's no big thing. A lot of kids follow their older siblings or friends that are off on college, and they only see the college party. They don't see them show up to class. They don't see them study halls. They don't see them participating in small group discussions. No, they're only seeing the parties and the stories from the parties. And that's where they feel like that's what they're up against, and what they lead to is a overexposure and thinking that it's no big thing. Or the cannabis industry and how connected it is to the minimization of cannabis. Literally, kids are getting exposed to cannabis ads of medical marijuana, and the misinformation around cannabis is so acute in our backyards and in our communities that literally down the street from your school, there's medical marijuana stops that are so accessible to kids, but it's in their back pocket. They're seeing news about it. They're seeing websites for it. They're seeing docs that they can get to, access points all the time. Desensitization of culture, increased exposure to inappropriate language and terms. That's the video games. Bullying, foul language, and the rise of cyberbullying is real, and offensive language again online. There's a disconnect that happens when I am in a person-to-person setting and I'm seeing somebody and I hear somebody say something to me or I say something to them. I'm going to think twice about if I was to use an expletive. But online, people are not seeing how they feel. They're not feeling how they see. So they are just outwardly saying more and more, and there's a disconnect. So there's a rise of foul language and bullying on it. There's a lot of information around body image issues and unrealistic body standards affecting both males and females. There's a lot of discussion around female anatomy and how people are so misrepresented because of apps can distort how their body presence are. But I don't want to minimize because I see it in boys too, and how body images are affecting them as well. And the sad truth is I can spend a whole night talking about the sexualization of our youth and how exposed they are to an easy access point to pornography, and how easy it is and how accessible it is in their back pockets today. And how so much of our youth is thinking that this is what intimacy is, and there's no discussion point around it. There's no healthy discussion point around it. They're just getting exposed to it without a healthy dynamic about what it really means. And so that's where there's so much desensitization that happens in our culture today. Collectively, as an impact on our mental health, anxiety and depression and self-esteem are all affected. And from a self-esteem standpoint, the constant exposure of the idealized online person and how people feel inadequate and how people feel like they have to live up to the digital age of what they're supposed to be like. Depression, I identified earlier about the social isolation and the lack of meaningful connections, and that really kind of spins out people in depression and anxiety, and how the constant disconnection and social comparison fuels that disorders of fear, and the fear of missing out becomes real fears for some, that's what they really feel like is their reality. The correlation to mental health and technology, public shaming, and shaming doesn't have to be outwardly like somebody making a comment or putting something out there, which by the way happens, but it's also public abandonment. And so many youth think they post something out there, a vulnerability about themselves, or they post an image, but nobody likes it, or their friend doesn't get back to them. The amount of times that I sit across from youth that are talking about relationships and forming relationships, and then all of a sudden having a fallout, a breakup, or a disconnect because they don't know what happened. They feel ghosted. Ghosted is a real thing. But without understanding why people get ghosted, that's a critical thing. Because the difference is when somebody doesn't get back to me and I know that they're available to me and I know they are reading my text threads, that's one thing. But what if I've had this happen so many times where Johnny doesn't hear back from Sally. Johnny thought he was in a relationship with Sally. And the next thing you know, Sally doesn't respond to his text threads. But all of a sudden, 5 months later, he finds out Sally got in trouble and Sally didn't have an access point and Sally's technology was taken away. But Johnny has already felt that abandonment and didn't have the full context, didn't know what was going on. So there's so many iterations of that I could tell you many, many stories on. The other aspects of things when it comes to re-traumatization of things and how kids, will have a bad day in school. And the best thing about school is the next day there's a whole other trauma. But what happens if a kid reflects and obsesses about something that they've posted or seen? And that's where they get caught up in that negative feedback loop. And that's something to really consider as well. And lastly is like when somebody's trying to get clean and sober, they sometimes are still friends with groups or individuals that are nostalgizing or glorifying substance abuse. That's what they see is in their inbox, and that's what they see, in their reels. That's what they think reality is when it's not. And so it's learning how to disconnect their social media, learning how to reframe their frame is really what I ask people to consider. A lot of people are asking me about ChatGPT. A lot of schools are asking me about ChatGPT because 90% of students are referring to ChatGPT for homework within months of its launch. They were able to show the use pattern of this adoption and patterns of use. And this was a couple years back when it first launched. And now they're able to see year after year of the last couple of years, a dramatic drop. May 15th, when college students are done, June 15th, when high schools are done, and the summer breaks and the fall breaks and the Christmas breaks, they can literally see use patterns. And who is using ChatGPT the most? Students. Who is actively engaging in it? Your students, high school students, and college students. And one of the biggest fears or topics I talk about is I'm not afraid of talking about ChatGPT, but what is ChatGPT? It is a search engine that is artificial intelligence, a learning language model that is searching the internet in an unbridled way without any filters and giving you the average of what's out there on the internet. So do we want to cultivate an average student? Do you as a parent want to cultivate an average kid? Or do you want to have a kid question, develop, and excel? And that's the difference I ask every young adult to think about. An overdependence upon AI is an overdependence of looking for the middle of the road and the middle language out there. And without putting healthy filters on it, without asking and prompting in a corrective manner, which a lot of kids aren't learning how to do. They're just given this access point called artificial intelligence. And without learning how to say in a prompt, and don't use Reddit, or just use Research Defense, or just use, they're getting a lot of misinformation. Do you know a statistic that I just learned last week is that ChatGPT openly admits that it's still about 20% wrong. And I don't know about you, but 80% is not enough for me to look at it, ChatGPT, as a high access point. And so it is all over the place and very accessible to us, but we really need to consider our sources. And again, double click on everything, because the truth is, in a couple of years from now, everybody in this call has heard the term Google it, right? But in a couple of years from now, I don't think Google it's going to be a term. I'm going to hear everybody say, what did Chat say? What did Claude say? So I hope you can hear me. I know I froze there for a second. But yeah, so when it comes to these availability of access point, I ask people to consider where they're getting their information. Sorry, I lost you there for a second, and I had technology issues with my technology talk. Before I get to solutions, is there any questions you have about that, or does this make sense? And are you all saying, thanks, Mike? We now have more evidence to say this is a problem and we should be more scared. I wasn't trying to do that as a goal. My goal was to inform why it's an issue. Now I'm going to get into how we can help, what we can do. So a call to action. It takes a village. It's not going to be one person, but know that you as a parent and your relationship technology and modeling it, you're going to hear, this is the one big takeaway you're going to hear from me for the rest of tonight, is how do you get your kids off their devices? How do you get your kids off their phones? You may need to model it. You may need to be the change you are in the house. And so when I talk about interventions for your kids, Some of you may be listening for yourself, and that's good. So I need you to buy into being open-minded to renegotiating your relationship with technology. So when it comes to parents setting healthy boundaries for themselves, fostering communication around it, teachers and schools across the state of Pennsylvania, every school is adopting new integrated technology protocols and procedures, and it's a moving target. It's not done. And us as therapists, we're always evaluating our approach and learning how to do it. But I still want to hold tech companies accountable, and I still want to get it out there for our community members to understand. Family. You as parents, is this what your family looks like? Is this what your family night looks like? Everybody's sitting on their phones, staring at their devices and not looking at each other. If that's the family, it's growing disconnected. It's silent dinners, it's lost traditions, and it's getting disconnected. So I absolutely want to change that and not allow that as an accepted. There's a digital divide in our families. Families reported feeling more isolated, deepening disconnection, simply reduced eye contact, shallow engagement, and emotional distance are some of the basics of how people just don't feel as connected. They don't feel a part of these emotional connections, replaced by emojis or brief conversations, fragmented communications, fragmented sentences, fragmented quick words lead to fragmented feelings and fragmented connection. So I want to start to slow you down and interrupt that. So keeping clear, I don't want you to become the screen police. I don't want you to just try to keep up with all the stuff, but you can keep up with understanding some of the tech talk, some of the aspects of it, but I don't want you to get over obsessed with the next app that's out there, i.e. Even ChatGPT. Because again, like we're going to really get back to some of the basics of parenting is we're able to renegotiate our relationship with technology, and you're able to renegotiate your kids' relationship as well. And again, the goal isn't to eliminate it, but it's really to create more balanced family cultures and family time. So let's get into strategies. Mindful tech consumption. How many times have you found yourself going, I'm just going to be on my phone for 2 minutes? Or I just want to look up one thing, and then you get pulled into social media or you get pulled into different things. Ask yourself, why am I going to get caught up in this now? What is happening? And all of a sudden I'm scrolling and I lost 15 minutes. Was it something I didn't want to deal with? Is there something going on in my day? Is there certain times during my day? You're going to hear that from me multiple times for the rest of tonight. The beginning of the day and the end of the day are my two critical times you're going to hear about. But for some, it could be post lunch, or for some, it could be when they're bored. Boredom is a big trigger. But guess what boredom allows for? Creativity. And I don't want creativity to get lost in the translation of all this technology. So boredom is often our biggest culprit. And I'll get into how to create more alternative activities. But critical times that I really want you to think about is the morning ritual. And think about how you start your day with intentionality, as opposed to all of a sudden you're on your device and you're taken off. I was a big victim of this. I for a long time was like, oh, I'm Mike Blanche. I'm a therapist. I gotta be on call. And our friend Rick is a famous therapist, couples counselor, said to me once, "Are you a crisis counselor?" And I'm like, "No, I'm a therapist." He's like, "So are you a crisis person? You need to be online all the time?" And I'm like, no, I don't. My wife runs a telehealth company, and she goes 100 miles an hour. But we figured out we're not on-call centers, and we don't need to be on all the time. And so we looked at our routines. We looked at our times of day, and especially the nighttime and especially the morning time. And so if there's one thing I wanted you to get out of tonight is that morning routine, that morning time. I want you to wake up. Imagine waking up by, you can find this thing. I don't know if you ever heard of this thing called Amazon, and you can find this thing called an alarm clock. I don't know if you remember these things. They're still out there. You can still buy one today for $9.99 on Amazon. Buying an alarm clock and waking up to an alarm clock, keeping these things. I keep this now in another room on a desk plugged in. So in our room, we just have our beds and our, So it is there to sleep and not this, I'm not even awake and I roll over and I'm checking. I just want to see what time it is. Oh, let me see that one pop up. Let me see that one notification. Oh, there's an email from, and before I'm awake, I am off. We need time in the morning time to get grounded. So waking up, having a little routine, keeping devices out of reach for a little bit of time, maybe for an hour. I know that's a lot for some, but giving yourself some time to take a shower, have a cup of coffee, look at the sunlight. There's this famous podcaster, Andrew Huberman. He's done a lot of research on the role of sun in the morning time affecting circadian rhythm. That's a great podcaster. I recommend him all the time. But that idea of allowing natural light in, getting grounded before you invite technology on. So again, I'm not opposed to technology. I'm asking you to critically think about time management and your relationship with the morning time, and then trying to find ways so you're not constantly interrupted. Most people know I'm a therapist. Most people know there are certain days they can't, my wife particularly knows when she can't get a hold of me. I'm in session certain nights, certain days, and I only check my device at certain times during the day. At some point in my career, I used my phone as a watch, and I got some great feedback. People were looking at me, looking at my phone, and I was checking the time. They thought I was checking the device. And I was like, whoa. And then I put it on silent and I could hear it vibrate across the room. And I thought I was doing a really good thing. And then clients would feel that vibration and be like, oh, do you need to get that? Because if you need to get that, it's okay. And I'm like, no, 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 no. This is really important. But even the vibration would interrupt people's connection and people's clarity and people's goals. So now I don't even have the device at all. I turn it off because I don't want it to interrupt that space at all. And think about that from a therapist perspective. Think about that from a home perspective. And think about if you had time breaks or evening wind downs, 1 or 2 hours before you're going to bed, your sleep will dramatically improve. And I can't recommend it enough if you had some downtime at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day to allow your brain to detach, unwind, and let go, and maybe get an old school journal or maybe get an old school book to read. Kindle's okay, as long as it's just like you're staying with a couple books. But when it comes to, I'm a big fan of like texture, different lighting, so that it's a different way to connect. So taking scheduled tech breaks, time-focused activities during work are so critical. And so we have a leadership meeting every Wednesday from 10 till noon, 2 hours. We don't have any devices on the table. And we started implementing that a couple years ago in our organization. We do so much work better. And so consistent routines, daily habits help so much. Creating technology-free environments. I'm a big I'm a big fan of grayscaling. For those people that don't know what grayscaling is, that's when you can make your device, I just did it there, black and white, so that when you're in on your device and you're looking at your device, sometimes the lighting of it could be too bright, could be too intense. And so switching it to black and white can be really helpful. What does that do? It decreases that dopamine flood, that hit from all the colorful apps, all that connection with all the screen activity. And studies simply show that it just simply cuts down usage up to 40%. And if you want to try it just for a week, see what it does. And every time, Kim's been with me many times, parents and people come up to me at the end of the talk and say they've done it, and it decreases their use pattern, decreases their connection to it. And again, it's just simply seeing the device for what it is, as opposed to it taking over us. We need to redefine our relationship with technology. So technology-free zones, designated certain spaces. For some, it's the dinner table. For some, it's a corporate table. It's just a starting point, a visual cue to have a space that it's like putting it in a basket. There's some schools that's what they do. There's literally a school I work with that have those shoe things on the back of a door, or they zip it up in some Ziploc tech-free bags. I've worked with schools that do a lot of different things. So they have a space that's a shut down space And again, there's a school that I work with that literally it's called bell to bell, that they put in their device at the beginning of the day and they get it back at the end of the day. And literally their connection with lunch and interaction of kids has taken off. So I can't recommend that enough. But again, being the model for your kids, and kids watch what you do more than what you say. So it's so vital to share what your journey is and your challenges are with your friends and family, but also be the example. And you again can renegotiate your own relationship with technology so your kids can watch that as well. Morning mindfulness and evening I've already talked about, but I can't stress that enough. And the blue light exposure, even on the screen tonight, but setting clear boundaries around it. We did for a long time in my marriage, Tuesday nights, technology free nights was great. We'll get back to that, I promise, at some point, because it really helps our connection. We have date night on Tuesday nights, and we decided to leave our phones for a couple of those times, and it helped tremendously for us to connect as husband and wife. But my son, again, is a lot younger, but he doesn't have a device. And so one of the questions was, how early? It's, again, no judgment if your kids already have a device, but I'm asking kids and I'm seeing kids delay the onset as late as they can. And when they're on their device, it's limiting the exposure of how long they're on their devices for, and what they're on is more important. So again, a kid might have access to 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, an iPad with, say, Disney and Netflix, but maybe not YouTube. Maybe waiting a little bit longer, as long as you can when it comes to that algorithm. Or video games, maybe 10, 11, 12. But then when it gets to 13, 14, we want to think about timing of how long they're on these devices for. And then again, at any stage, at any age, you can renegotiate relationship with them to really have a better connection. Identifying at-risk times, idle hands is the biggest thing. Boredom and scrolling during boredom is a huge time. But in recognizing the unhealthy patterns to break those habits and identify healthy engagements and different ways to connect, we need to prepare. We need to be proactive, and we really need to try to get in to help kids and ourselves build healthier activities so that they're doing other things besides just taking their devices away. The biggest challenge that I see with families and where families struggle the most is taking the device away without prompting an alternative for the kids to really engage with. Journaling, art class, yoga, physical activity. So we take the device away without giving a kid an alternative expression, a different way to connect. But the other piece is embracing the pause, meaning allowing yourself to embrace the awkwardness of silence, or allowing yourself to not feel like you have to fit in and fill in every day with excitement or just a dopamine hit. But the discomfort boredom leads to creativity and self-reflection, that the possibility is endless, that they can find another part of themselves as opposed to the distractory event. When and what to do about mindless scrolling is an awareness check. Before unlocking the phone, think about what you're going to do, what your intentions are, what your goals are when you pull this out. Are you trying to connect? Are you needing to entertain? Or are you escaping from discomfort? Why is what the pull that's helping you get caught up in this autopilot mode where you're, next thing you know, you're just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling? Setting clear intentions. I'll check, messages for 5 minutes beats aimless scrolling. So it's just saying, I'm going to look at this. Now, a lot of adolescents and a lot of young adults will actually use an old school alarm, and I'll literally put an alarm status on them. There are a couple apps that are out there, and there are a couple ways to get apps on there to think about. But I ask parents, and this gets to one of the questions that was on the questions, I ask parents to really not look at technology doing the role of parenting, but to think about having that conversation with a kid is way more vital, way more important than monitoring their screen activity. Meaning, I'd like you to sit with them awkwardly, or I'd like you challenge you to sit with them and ask them what's going on with them and why can't they, as opposed to putting on an app that could break certain apps. However, with all that said, I'll tell you one of my favorites. It's called the Brick. And the Brick is this device. I don't have it, but it literally looks like about the size of a thing like this. It's literally a brick that's a device that you can set up with your phone that'll shut down certain access apps, but you have to bring it to the Brick to open or close the app accessibility. So you can limit the accessibility to certain apps to this device. The reason why I like it so much, and the reason why it's been so successful, is it starts the conversation. It pulls people in to when you're talking with your kid and bringing the kid in to have a conversation, as opposed to the apps that are like remote. I'd rather you have the conversation with your kid about what's happening, and we're going to mutually decide that we're going to shut off YouTube, we're going to shut off certain video games, and we're going to shut off only allow a phone or texting on after 8 p.m. And then you're going to hand the device at 11 p.m. and you're going to hand the phones into me, and we're going to plug it in over here, and no iPad, no technology after 11:30 at night because you need to sleep. But what it does is create more of the discussion and less putting it on another kind of app or something that's going to do your job. So I'd rather you have that connection, that conversation, more than anything else. And so when it comes to combating mindless scrolling, again, is something I talk about all the time. The ensuring safety, privacy, and online safety and awareness, the term digital citizenship, informing kids all the time that once you put something out there, it's really important to think about the accessible points and what kids are exposed to, but also what information is out there. You're going to hear a lecture from people talking about admissions offices. I've worked at universities. Admission offices don't have time to scroll kids and troll kids' online activity. They don't. However, if you're an athlete, you got to know your coach at an NCAA team is going to check your social media status. If you're an employer, we work with an outside company that will do access and assess people online exposure in their social media spread. And so when I tell kids every day, you got to think about how you're representing yourself. Unfortunately, you need to think about what you put out there on the internet, because this is identifiable, trackable information. It's called digital footprint. It's called digital citizenship. It's privacy awareness, because so many kids don't think what's out there and what gets spread and what is social media responsible use. And we as families and we as schools and we as educators need to have a constant communication around that. I always talk about this mindfulness use and balancing activities, but what does that really mean? We all have to engage in this idea of tackling addictive symptoms to this, because we're all going to be exposed to the addictive natures behind this wave of addiction and this wave of technology that's got to try to capture your connection and capture your use pattern, because they want the product because what I realized is we're the customer, but we're also consuming the product, but we're also the identified people that they're going after, because they want us to watch and participate more in social media to identify our patterns to sell us the next wave of stuff. So we have to really get across to our kids, because kids, I'll tell you this every day, how many kids like being told what to do? No kid likes being told what to do. So I challenge that kid to think about, I don't want to tell you what to do, but I'll stop sharing now for a couple minutes. But I'll tell you this, no kids like being told what to do. So then I challenge that kid that I don't want technology to tell you what to do either. And I want you to not just critically think and critically fight me, but I want you to critically think what you're getting fed on the internet and what you're getting fed on social media. So I kind of dovetail that idea of kids are resistant and they're observant and they want to critically think. And I take that same critical thinking you give Monday through Friday to the education, I want you to, critically think about what you're getting exposed to the internet, and think about what you're getting thought about. So, lastly, I do want to leave a couple minutes at the end. So I want to flip through this idea that the common threads that a lot of people think about that, I don't want to miss, is just simple outdoor play. There's a pushback of getting foot on grass connection and being able to connect and being able to shut off. And if you haven't, found a creative pursuit of outside play, artistry, music, image, just to kind of get hands-on activities, Legos, anything to get kids away from their devices into a product of some type of social interaction too, in-person. So, we're still seeing post-pandemic a decrease of social interaction. So we need to employ and implore all opportunities to foster interpersonal skills, interpersonal communication. Establishing limits, clear, consistent rules around it, renegotiating those rules, implementing, routines, tech habit routines, technology-free weekends, technology-free zones, managing your own technology and engaging in outside tech-free activities with your child or with other people in your life is so important. Again, it's more about communicating with your kids. It's more about monitoring, and less like I've worked with some parents that just want to fixate on every and all technology piece. It's more assuring your clients. I'm sorry, this is also prepared for therapists, but ensuring your clients, but ensuring your families and ensuring yourselves and your kids that with no judgment, you just want to feel connected with each other about it. Critically thinking is what I was talking about earlier, ethical behavior, responsible use patterns, so that you are really connecting with this and really kind of challenging your kid to think about how they're relating to their digital citizenship and their relationship with their digital footprint, and to make sure what they put out there knows is really important, and how they present themselves is really vital. So for those that really struggle, one of the things that I can't stress enough is if there's real unhealthy dynamics going on in the home front, or if you're seeing a significant pattern that's constant and a real unhealthy relationship with technology, I really want you to think about these last few points. First and foremost, a digital detox, really implementing clear boundaries, upfront renegotiation, and to really shut off for a period of time to help people get away from it. Because again, kids sometimes have no idea how connected or how misconnected they are. So I'm a big fan of ski trips. I'm a big fan of fishing trips. I'm a big fan of getting away from, oh, we can't get cell service here. I'm a big fan. My last building, the Washington Square building in the center of Westchester, used to not have cell service. I was so excited when I knew they weren't able to get Wi-Fi in my building. And so I was happy for that. So finding ways to digitally detox, have them shut down so that we can get back to some other things like sleep hygiene, and really education around that to get kids to get healthier sleep is such a huge thing. And having them not have access points or sleep interrupted is such a huge thing. Mindfulness, understanding of why they're scrolling, challenging them to critically think about what's happening, introducing meditation, concentration exercises to combat attention fragmentation, which is still ongoing, which is still happening all the time. And then creating real world activities and social development. And if your kids are older, I'm a big fan, if they're not involved in sports, if they're not involved in classic activities, even drama or any activities on the school, getting a part-time job. I'm a big fan of kids having to work in just working with others and learning how to, talk to adults and make eye contact and hold the door and wait tables, or just to have some social interaction is such a huge learning curve. And lastly, there's a lot of great links that you have access point to here, as well as on Kim's website. So please know there's so much out there. Lastly, there's these two documentaries. That one's on Netflix that I love. And Kim, I'm going to ask you a huge favor because I always flip-flop the names. What's the one?
Social Dilemma.
The Social Dilemma is accessible, free, downloadable on Netflix. It's a little dated even now, but I'm a big fan of still watching it with your kid to get them to think about how they feel about seeing it, talking about it as a place to talk about that with. So that's a huge thing I recommend if you want to educate yourselves and educate your kids at the same time, is watching it together. And then the other one, that's the three-part series that is only accessible. You can still get snippets online. What's the other one name?
Gosh, which one are you talking about? Are you talking about screenagers?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think there's still just screenings. You have to go in person. I don't think you can watch them online yet. I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Yes, but they have a great website that you could download
Yes.
information from, and it, helps support Jonathan Haidt's work. And by the way, Jonathan Haidt's stuff, if you Google the actual generation,
Uh, you could please mute yourselves. I'm going to see who that was. We can mute them. Go
don't
ahead.
know who it was. But anyway, the greatest thing about working from home, I'm sure there's kids in the background, but in all sincerity, Jonathan Haidt's work, The Anxious Generation, he put all of that accessible on the internet. You can download research, click on YouTube links. You can click on so much stuff on his website as well. So just to let you know that as well. But please know, be a part of the conversation. The amount of great work, Kim, that you put out there and put up there, I can't thank you enough for all the great work that you've done.
Thank you, Mike.
So I'll save time at the end, but I don't see any questions. I hope this is what you were looking to get out of tonight. Um, please know that if you get a chance, oh, thank you for putting screenagers. And please know, you download information, ask questions, know that this is the beginning of a conversation. Know that I want you to have many, many conversations with your kids and not to be afraid. I'd rather you have an awkward conversation once and to miss out an opportunity to really see a way to connect with your kids. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Kim, if you have any questions, or Teresa, from the school perspective, was this what you were hoping to get out of tonight?
Yeah, this is fantastic. I know it's been highly requested to have these resources for our parents. Actually, in an earlier meeting today with parents, I talked about sharing these resources with our principals so that they can get them on all of the school newsletters. So I'll reach out to our 7 principals so they can share it out. So it can just continue to trickle down because we had a great showing tonight and I appreciate everyone coming. But I would love for these resources to be continued to shared and, for it to be accessible to them. So we'll make sure that they're in multiple places for families.
Great. Thanks so much.
And I think too, Mike, somebody had asked an earlier advanced question about, she's my son is like on YouTube looking at workout videos, but then he's also gets caught up in the cat videos that you talk about, right?
Yep.
So it's kind of like one of those classic process addictions where, gambling isn't required. We can abstain completely from gambling, but technology is akin to food and sex and love and relationships and other things that we need to moderate.
Sure.
So yeah, can we talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you bringing that up. It's not about, again, YouTube's not the enemy. It's how we're talking about it and what we're doing about it. And so looking at motive, looking at goals, looking at intentionality. So having those conversations with kids around, do you want to look at workout programs? Great. But all of a sudden you find yourself drifting into either unhealthy patterns or unhealthy websites or unhealthy videos. So it's like really trying to, again, gauge some balance, gain some perspective. And again, at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, when your brains are either in cognitive overload at the end of the day, you're more susceptible to kind of drifting, or in the first part of the day. So that's where I'm saying taking breaks and taking some stop gaps so that when you do go on, you can be much more intentional about why and what am I going to look at versus I'm exhausted and I'm just drifting into whatever I want to download. Does that get across?
Yes, for sure.
It's a great comment. So short version is we've been pulled into certain school districts to get really specific. So I'm happy to follow up. You can follow up with Kim about getting directly involved in any school district conversation. So we've done presentations to school districts, school officials, and I've seen and heard a multitude of things, even with AI, where I like this one school district where they have a green, yellow, or red version of how they are involved with AI. Like a red version is like, nope, they're not allowed to use, and they're pulling out blue books and they're going back to answering questions that way. Versus green is full access and they can do whatever they want to on the internet and ChatGPT. But the yellow is, wait, you're allowed to use it, but how you use it, and you have to share what prompts you use to how to get it. And we need to really talk about our usage of this technology. So that I'm a huge fan of, is really getting into that middle ground to see like how are they using it, how are they enhancing it. And I loved your word, is we got to look at technology as a way to enhance and to really get the best of our student versus the average. And that's what I want to really cut away from, is the middle ground that AI does. The learning language model gives us the average. I want to excel. And that's where I challenge our students. Sure. And how much is healthy time? 5 hours, 3 hours, 7 hours. It's not, I don't want to get you set on a certain number of hours because there are certain weeks that are better than others, but we need to monitor. We need to have a conversation. We need to self-regulate and think about it. So great questions. Thank you.
Mike, there was a question that was dropped just to me, and I'll share it with you. Are there any nonprofits or other avenues that host no tech days challenges for teenagers that kids can follow and get their community/friends to follow with? I would think Screenagers would be one that probably has some of those ideas.
Yes. Yeah. Screenagers is a great access point. There's a really great thing in Westchester School District called Unplugged. That is it's a nonprofit called Unplugged. That's a group of parents coming together that are trying to help coordinate to other parents when they want to unplug, how they want to unplug, because a lot of times parents are going, well, I know it's my relationship with technology my kids are exposed to, but when I drop my kid off for a play date, what are they getting exposed to? And that's the biggest discussion point that happens every day. But a group of parents are coming together. The Wait Till Eighth movement that Jonathan Haidt talks about is a part of that. Or just a simple thing of like communicating with other parents. So it doesn't have to go to that not-for-profit level, big level. It could be a local level of parents are, not just 1,000 school teachers, how you are, but communicating to other parents and not be afraid to ask, hey, what are you like with it? And really like have that awkward conversation with other parents to really have them think like, because I'm not worried about my kid, I'm not worried about your kid, but I'm worried about other kids. So let's think about, what they're getting exposed to. Great question.
Teresa, anything you'd like to
No,
share?
I just want to thank everyone for coming. We do focus on digital citizenship as a district. Our tech webpage has a lot of information as well for families as far as what our focus is on. Actually, Mike, what you just said about that red, green, and yellow light, our administrative team went through that same training, so we saw that. And this year we did establish an AI think tank that is comprised of administrators and teachers in the district to start to think about. I think kind of to what the one person just shared, it's very difficult for districts because we have to balance, curriculum assessment and instructional needs with this kind of limitation that we want to also present with screen time. And I think districts can be hesitant to develop policy because the second you put that policy into place, it's outdated, right? It just moves so fast. And so we are starting to explore that as a district. That AI think tank was started this year to start to think about how we can build out those plans. But yeah, we have a lot of information. I'm really looking forward to sharing out both the recording and the resources that you guys provided so our families can continue to explore those. Yeah, and another good avenue, just real quick, for that kind of balance between school and home life, when sometimes we don't always have so as the district level, we can only do so much, is our PTOs. They do a lot of great work in sharing out resources, and they can kind of connect the community and parents. Like if you're finding it hard to connect with other parents just towards that, some of those other goals like the unplugged, the PTOs do a great job of exposing parents to each other in those settings. So
It's great.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Teresa. And Mike, thank you so much for yet another amazing presentation. It just keeps getting better. I don't know. You're on top of it. Thank goodness. Thank you all. Really wonderful group and glad you're here.
Thank you so much for everybody taking time. Thank you, the School District Great Valley. Thank you so much for hosting. And thanks, Kim, again.